Welcome to our 5 on 5. We're pleased to welcome back Oregon Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum. Good to see you, Madam Attorney General. Thank you.
Great to see you again, Craig.
And so it's been a bit since we've seen you. I've got a lot of questions, but first, congratulations. You announced you are not seeking re-election.
Correct.
Exciting decision you made about 6 months ago.
Yes.
What led you to that?
Well, it's funny because there's no term limits for Attorney General, whereas there are for other statewide office holders like the governor, the treasurer, the secretary of state. So I kind of created my own. I decided that the time had come for others to have the opportunity to serve, and that it was time for me to look on to the next phase of my career, which has been wonderful, and it's been an amazing opportunity to serve as your Attorney General.
Exactly, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were Oregon's first female Attorney General, too.
Yes, I still am.
And you always will be.
Hopefully there will be a second sometime.
You always
yes.
will be. Okay,
Thank you.
I have to ask, since you were here, and it's something we've been talking about, Nightly News just had a story on it earlier this week, and I know you're up on this. Grants Pass is arguing a case before the Supreme Court in late April on how cities nationwide can navigate their homeless crisis. California Governor Gavin Newsom is among a handful of Democratic lawmakers hoping that the conservative court will side with them on this issue. Now, Oregon is not involved in this, correct?
Not the state of Oregon.
Okay.
The League of Cities has filed a brief, and certainly there's a lot of course, grants passed. But the state has determined that there's so many amicus briefs in this case, I think there's about at least 25, that we're sitting that out. Neither side really quite had the argument that we thought we would want to join. So we're looking at it. We're certainly very concerned about it. Homelessness is, of course, a huge problem in the state, and we represent the governor as well as the state agencies that handle homelessness issues, and they all pretty much determined that there was not a need for us to weigh in this particular case. The good news is we do have a state statute, and the state statute, I think, will prevail even if the Supreme Court does something that would surprise folks, and that does allow us to have ordinances so long as they are reasonable and are not unnecessarily cruel to individuals who unfortunately sometimes end up in the streets.
Last time we talked, I believe we talked about the gun measure 114, and just to catch everybody up, of course it passed narrowly in 2022. A federal judge has ruled it doesn't violate the U.S. Constitution. A Harney County judge here in Oregon ruled differently in state court. Last month you asked the Oregon Court of Appeals to rule that 114 can take effect while the state court appeal proceeds. Where do we stand with that today? Are we waiting a ruling on that?
Right, we are waiting a ruling on that, but keep in mind that the state court wasn't quite the same ruling because that judge was relying on the state constitution, whereas the federal judge was relying on the federal constitution, the Second Amendment. So what we have told the court is that we believe that will prevail, and that we believe that the time has come after several years of waiting to implement the new law, and that if eventually there were to be, which would be a surprise, frankly, for the Oregon Supreme Court not to overturn the state court judge. But if that were to happen, then of course we could put a stop to the implementation. But we think it's time for it to go forward. Okay,
we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll have much more in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to our 5 on 5. Again, we're here with Oregon Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum. We're talking a lot about all the different things your office is doing, now involved in the Albertsons-Kroger proposed merger that the federal government is also looking at. What's Oregon's involvement?
Well, we're trying to put a stop to that merger along with the FTC and a number of other states. In fact, the FTC chose to file here in Oregon in federal court. So we're working very closely with them. We feel that it is anti-competitive, and that with the prices of groceries these days, the last thing that Oregonians need is a merger of the two largest supermarket chains, certainly in the state, but in fact also in the country. So we are definitely going to court. And we're hoping that we can put a stop to that merger and keep grocery prices down, and that we can also keep service high. For example, these stores, many of them have pharmacies. We're concerned about reduction in the services by their pharmacies, and also for workers. We think it's harmful for the workers. And there's something like 28,000 workers just here in Oregon between those two companies.
Wow, and I should let our viewers know, of course, Albertsons and Safeway are the same company today, and Kroger operates Fred Meyer, in case you're not aware.
That's right. And there's almost 200 stores in the state of Oregon.
Yeah, so many,
combined
yes,
together.
Indeed. Last time we talked, we were talking about opioid settlements, Monsanto settlements. I guess, and these things take time. The money's coming in now. What is your office or the state going to do with all the settlement money?
The money is coming in. In fact, the Monsanto settlement, we now have almost $600 million in the bank. That we have now set up, the legislature, thank you, set up an endowment, essentially, I'm calling it an endowment, so that money can be used over the next 50 to 100 years to make sure that our state gets cleaned up from these horrible PCB forever chemicals that have polluted our beautiful state. So that's number one. And number two, of course, the opioid settlements. We all know what a horrible thing this has been, and these companies have fueled the opioid crisis over the years and have finally come to account. And Oregon has settled for now, we're up to almost $1 billion in settlement money coming into the state over the next 18 years. So it's not quite as quick as the Monsanto monies that are in the bank, but we've already got about $50 million in, and we're already allocating that money through various committees and boards that have been set up in counties and cities. The tribes are receiving a chunk of that money because they are most impacted. And there's also, there's going to be more and more coming in and more allocations, in particular for the naloxone distribution, which is really a lifesaver for those who are overdosing on the streets. And we're hoping to reduce that, in lots of ways. But certainly this particular drug is essential. And so that's one of the ways in which, just as an example, we are already putting those funds to use.
Very good. Great to see you as always.
Great
Thanks for making the
to
time
see you.
for us.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Craig.
it.
Thanks for having me. It's always good to be here.
Thank you. Stay with us. We'll be right back.